Oh, we are ready.
People were talking about what? So I know everybody's grabbing their lunch, but I want to try to keep us on track. So welcome, everybody. We're thrilled to have such a good turnout, and I think you just should go ahead and email your office and say it's going to last till about 4 or 5, and then just we will do our best to stay on schedule. I'm Robin Steed. I am with 11 Alive during my day job, and I'm the current board president for the CVC. So welcome, everybody, here today. We're really excited about this program. And first, I want to thank Austin and Bird for the delicious lunch in these gorgeous offices. So this is an exciting year for the CVC because it's our 25th anniversary year. So think about how much corporate volunteerism, corporate social responsibility, philanthropy, employee volunteerism, whatever you call it at your firm, just think how much it's changed over the last 25 years and what new best practices there are. That's what we're here to do, to network and share and learn. You know, whether you're starting your EVP at your company and figuring it out, or whether you have been doing it for 10 or 20 years and you just need some new ideas and some new energy to re-engage those employees, I think we all can learn from each other and learn from our great presenters today. So let me take a minute and introduce our presenters. So Cheryl Naja, who's hosting us today. Cheryl is the Director of Pro Bono and Community Service for Austin and Bird. And one thing to be excited about Austin and Bird, they have been recognized by Fortune magazine for the last 17 years as one of the 100 best companies to work for. And this past year was named one of the 50 best companies for giving back. So she has served as her current role for over a decade in cooperation with a 95-member committee. That's a lot of people to manage. She provides strategic direction and implementation for pro bono and community service efforts on the firm for the firm-wide basis. She leads the firm's culture team, bringing together community engagement, development, diversity, sustainability, and work life in an effort to align best practices and achieve business goals. She is a graduate of Berry College and a former teacher, and began her legal career as a reference librarian, and she's also a past president of the CVC of Atlanta. So that's Cheryl. Yay, Cheryl. And her co-presenter is Katie Elder, which, you know, we're really lucky here in Atlanta to have Points of Light, a global firm of giving back in our backyard. I mean, there are a lot of cities that would crave for that. So we're lucky to have Katie here. She's a member of the Points of Light corporate institution team, and has been since 2012, and she serves as Senior Director for Corporate Training and Consulting, so she literally consults businesses all across the globe on employee volunteerism. So you're learning from two of the best. She brings her 15 years of experience in employee volunteerism, community affairs, and communications. In her current role, she consults with businesses to develop or enhance their employee engagement programs. Before joining Points of Light, Katie worked for the Home Depot and the Home Depot Foundation, managing community affairs programs and staff, as well as internal communications and strategies. She directed the Home Depot's Associate Volunteer Program, Team Depot, creating training communication materials across their retail stores, managed nonprofit relationships, and coordinated the donation process for Home Depot stores across the country. So she's also served on the board of directors for the Atlanta CVC, as well as president too. So excited for these two ladies to present to us today. So I'm going to turn it over to you two.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you. All right, we'll get started here. So that everybody's gotten lunch, right? Want to make sure you guys have fed, but please help yourself throughout the presentation. This is a formal training, but a very informal group. So,
and it occurs to me I should announce where facilities are.
Good idea.
If someone should need facilities, you can exit either of these doors, walk around the corner behind this room. There's a hallway, and then there is a hallway that runs perpendicular, and it's on that hallway. So either of these doors will take you around to where the restrooms are.
Which is very important, right? Safety
Yes.
first, or facilities first, always. So now that you've heard a little bit about Cheryl and I, we'd love just to understand better who's in the room with us today. So I've got a question, number one, up on the board here. Would just love to know where you are in your CSR journey. So raise your hand if you are just starting an employee volunteer program at your company, or just thinking about it, really, sort of here to learn all about getting started. Great. And then those of you who maybe have a little bit more experience or have a more longstanding program at your company, who might be here to learn about scaling or reorganizing some aspect of the program. Any of you guys here? Great. So we've sort of got half and half. And then I guess there's probably a group that fits under the other category, right? Who are you out there who are here for some other wonderful reason? Great. Fabulous. All right. And then if there are any brave souls out there, I know you might have food in your mouth, but would love to know if there are any specific reasons why you're here, what you would like to get out of the training. Anyone willing to share? Please, go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Greta with JLL. We're a new member, and we have had our community connection group at JLL for 6 years now. So we're interested in kind of seeing what you guys share with us and where we measure up now, and hopefully have some takeaways that we can implement in our own.
Great, Greta.
We're very excited to hear what you have to teach us.
Thank you. Please.
I'm Keisha Bond. I'm actually an employee at Deloitte, and we're always challenged with engaging people because we're in a client service business
Right.
where we sit at our clients' locations and we travel a lot. So trying to engage employees in, creative volunteer opportunities. So very interested to hear from you.
Some ideas. Great. All right. Anyone else willing to share why they're here today? Awesome. All right. Well, it sounds like you guys are ready to get started, right? All right. So here are some learning objectives for us over the next hour and a half or so, just to make sure you are in the right room, right? Here are the things you're going to learn by the end of this training, we hope. You're going to first understand practices of effective employee volunteer programs. At Points of Light, we've done some research on what we think are the most important sort of foundational elements around employee volunteer programs. So we're going to share those with you. We hope that you'll be better equipped to plan, design, and evaluate an impact-driven program. We're going to talk to you a little bit about employee motivations, why they decide to volunteer through their employer. So hopefully you'll have a better understanding of those employee motivations and be able to connect some of the latest research, best practices, and tools that we'll be sharing with your program once you get back to the office, which hopefully won't be this afternoon because who wants to go back to the office, right? After the conclusion of this training, we are going to send out the deck so that you'll have this information at your fingertips. There will be some hyperlinks you'll see in the PDF, so some of the elements here will be, you'll be able to click on and view. And then we're also going to send out some supplemental materials. And what this is the list of our 7 practices of effective employee volunteer programs. We've got some benchmarking data from a Points of Light initiative called the Civic 50. And then we have a ton of hyperlinks for you to have at your fingertips, of course, to read more of the research that we're going to be sharing with you, more best practices and trends. So you'll have all that great information after the training concludes. But to get us started, let's make sure we're all on sort of an equal playing field. And I'm going to take us back to the term corporate social responsibility. Sure. You got it, Chris. Who wants to start? You want to start, Chris, since you're in the back?
I'm Chris Christie, and I manage our foundation's sponsorships and volunteer program at Wells Fargo.
Great.
I'm Venetia Smith, and I'm the Director of Employee and Community Relations for Junior Parks Company.
I'm Catherine Stramberg. I'm with the Artist Foundation. We give past
Great.
I'm Kate Luther. I'm the Community Involvement Coordinator at Production.
Lane Shakespeare, I'm the Corporate Citizenship Director at the office.
Great.
I'm Bianca Mazzarella with Narrative, Community Distribution Company and Communications and Public Affairs.
Awesome. All right. How about we go behind you guys to this table?
I'm Katie Phillips, and I work in Development Action Industries.
Great.
Katie Farmer, I'm the Regional Director for Metro Atlanta at Action Ministries.
I'm Laura Wagner. I'm with Hands on Atlanta. Hey, Juliana Cagle, also with Hands on Atlanta and Development.
Great.
I'm Takara Alam with KPG, and I'm a volunteer program.
Fabulous. How about you guys up here?
I am Beth Zimmerman with Sheltering Arms, and I run our volunteer program over there and wanted to kind of see what the other side is. I'm Megan Ryan with NCR Corporation. I manage our ambassador program, global program worldwide, and I work with Yvonne Whitaker with the foundation.
Great.
Again, I'm Greta Wilson with JLL, and I'm the chair of our Community Connections Committee this year.
And I'm Jill Kingley with JLL, and I'm the executive sponsor for Community Connection.
Yay. Ladies.
I'm Keisha Vaughn. I'm with Deloitte in our talent management group and sit on our CVC council.
Stacey Camp, I'm in internal communications at Purchasing Power.
Zakia Richards, and I intern with CVC.
Woo, yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Raina Short, and I'm with Delta Community Credit Union, and I oversee our community development.
I'm Neely Bain. I'm with Fraser and Dieter, and I'm on our people and culture team and manage our community efforts. I'm Katie Bird. I'm also with Fraser and Dieter, and I was starting to assist really with some of the community efforts. I'm Erica May. I'm project management with the civil engineering firm, the Continuo Group.
Melissa Holman, I'm the partnerships coordinator for Racetrack. Erica Bailey, partnerships manager for Racetrack.
Great. How about you ladies back here?
Hi, I'm Jenny Hodges from Wells Fargo on our community relations team. Fortunate to get insight from my team member, Christina Christie.
Yay.
Robin C., 11 Alive.
I'm Christy Adair with UCB. I lead corporate communications, which includes community relations. And as well as Robin and some of the others at the table, I'm on the board this year of the CVC.
And she chairs the impact.
Very important.
Number 26 to from 17.
Write that down.
I know, right?
I'm Sarah Simons. I am with Deloitte, operations manager at our audit group, and serve on our volunteer.
Great. And you guys.
I'm Sarah Pepper. I'm with Primrose Schools, and I'm with communications and community projects manager.
I'm Tiffany Toll, I'm graduate of Atlanta, and employees volunteer with our.
Fabulous.
Javaris Gresham, pro bono and community service coordinator here at Austin and Bird, and have the pleasure of working with lovely
I'm Georgia Ganis. I head up HR for Metro Atlanta.
Awesome. Great.
And Cheryl, it would maybe nice because we went around so quickly when we circulate materials, if we could share the registration list just so people know who was in the room. In case we didn't write all the names down.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very important too. I think Cheryl will talk to this later on in the presentation, but the people you're sitting in this room with are very important people because they all sort of do the same thing that you guys are doing. They're struggling with the same challenges and opportunities that you have back at work. So get to know one another because you'll realize your peers are a really important way to learn and better understand what you want to do at your employer with your employee volunteering, and they have a wealth of information, including all the CVC's member partners who are in the room. Our nonprofit member partners are really important too, right? We're all in this together. Yes. All right. So let's go back now to the slides here. We want to start out just to make sure people have, like I said, a level playing field. And the term corporate social responsibility is, of course, one you've, I'm sure, heard of. You might have heard it be referred to as corporate citizenship, civic engagement, triple bottom line, shared value, all sorts of terms that all pretty much mean the same thing, even though you might call it something different. What corporate social responsibility really means is this concept of shared value, that businesses are in this, of course, for making a profit, but at the same time, they can also take care of their people and the planet in a responsible manner, right? So they're creating shared value for their shareholders, for their employees, but also the communities where they operate. So that's an important term to learn. And what we're going to be talking about today, though, is just a really tiny, almost, aspect of corporate social responsibility, because that term is broad, and there are a lot of things that a company might put into their CSR strategy: labor practices, human rights, product responsibility, the way they package their product to have a less environmental footprint, et cetera, the way they operate, if they have retail stores or just offices, the way the lights, are more energy efficient. So a lot in the bubble of CSR, but what we're going to talk about today is employee volunteering, and that resides in the intersection of employee engagement and community involvement. So again, taking us real far back here, but if you're in the room because you thought EVP stood for Executive Vice President 101 or something else, you're probably in the wrong room, unfortunately. But We're here to talk about EVPs, which means employee volunteer programs. So our points of light's technical definition of employee volunteer program is that it's a planned, managed effort that seeks to motivate and enable employees to effectively volunteer under the official sponsorship and leadership of their employer. That means there is a formal strategy in place and mechanisms for employees to volunteer because the employer, that company, thinks it's a really smart strategy. Nearly 80% of companies these days have some form of employee volunteer program, whether it's very formal and structured with strategy behind it, or maybe they're just starting out and there's some spontaneous volunteering going on throughout the company. But why do you think companies are investing resources in employee volunteer programs? Well, I've got three sort of buckets of reasons why here, why EVPs actually matter. So we know that volunteers provide an amazing capital resource, human resource, to nonprofits in their communities, right? Especially as governments have less ability to support some of the most pressing social issues in their communities. So this creates an opportunity for businesses to step up, to lend their time and talent to driving positive impact. We know that volunteers, so there's a strong impact on communities. Volunteers provide a skilled and talented volunteer pool. They raise awareness for community needs. They help improve nonprofit capacity so that they can do more with less, perhaps. They also create quantifiable social impacts, so they are really making a difference when you're lending, you are actually making a difference when you're lending your time and talents to these nonprofits. And in fact, we've got a stat here that skilled volunteering, which means you're probably supporting a nonprofit through their general operations, their technology, or their professional services that they can't quite afford to purchase, is actually 500% greater value to that nonprofit than some of the traditional hands-on volunteering that many of us are engaged in, that also provides really great benefits as well. But just know that 500% greater is skills-based volunteering, which is why a lot of companies these days are interested in that topic. So not only does volunteering have an impact on the communities, but it has an actual impact on employees themselves. And I bet those of you in the room who are out there with your fellow employees volunteering feel this when you get back to the office after a project. It has a positive impact on their health. We've got some stats here, and again, we'll be sending you the PowerPoint with all of the related research that connects to these business case facts. So 76% say that volunteering makes them feel healthier and reduces stress. 92% say skills-based volunteering builds relationship management skills. 92% of hiring influencers, and there's some fabulous folks here from Deloitte, and a lot of this research is actually pulled from your impact survey reports, which we love. 92% say that of hiring influencers say that volunteering is an effective way to build your leadership skills and also improves interpersonal skills. And we've also seen that employee volunteering helps to boost morale and job satisfaction. And these are stats that all of you might want to take back if anyone is questioning sort of the return on investment, the ROI of your program. This is why you've got this in place. But the kicker here is on the next slide. This is the most important information I think that your senior leadership or middle management want to know, is the impact on companies themselves, why employers are investing in these types of programs. So in addition to having impact on communities and employees, volunteering also has bottom line benefits for your company. Much of this stems from an increase in employee engagement, which is a really hot term these days. We know a firm called Gallup, they do a lot of research. Their 2013 State of the Global Workplace report shows that only 13% of employees worldwide are engaged while at work, which leaves a heck of a lot of people that are either disengaged or actively disengaged at your company. So we think employee volunteering, and we've got some great proof points, helps add value across the employee life cycle, whether it's recruitment. You know, millennials these days are very interested in working for a purpose-driven company. They may, in fact, only choose to work for a purpose-driven company. So it helps with recruitment, it helps with retention, talent management and development, those skills that you might be practicing and learning as you're doing skills-based volunteering or leading a group of volunteers. And it also helps with retirement. Our friends here in town, AT&T, have a phenomenal program that's just for their retirees, gets them out into the communities and connects them still to the company, of course. So a lot of great details of why employee volunteering helps with that employee life cycle. And one of our most important facts here to take back is the real connection to the bottom line, right? Your senior leaders are saying, but why is this important? Why am I spending money on sending my employees out into the community? So we've talked about a few reasons why, but know that companies that have employee volunteer programs actually save $2,400 per employee against the bottom line, and that comes from reduced turnover, increased productivity, increased employee engagement with the other programs that you're running at your company. So again, this is a really important strategic business tool that you are leading at your companies. $2,400 a year, yes ma'am.
And if you run a good health program, any of you are participants in Virgin Pulse or any of those programs, this is one of the key pillars, community service, being involved. It also keeps you physically active, and companies, it reduces insurance costs for your companies. They want you doing this.
Mm-hmm. So yay, everybody has job security, right? Yay, okay, good. So just on the screen here, you'll see just a list of those business goals that your employee volunteer program can help with. It's really far-reaching. It's not just the warm and fuzzy, nice thing to do. And here is a really great slide. We're partners with Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, HPE, that's what they're called now. And this is something that when we share this information with folks, their eyes almost bug out of their head, because they do an annual survey of their employees, including their employee volunteers. So they're able to tell some really great data, pull some really great data from those employees who are engaged in their volunteer program. And if you'll see on the left-hand side here that employees who participate in their volunteer program experience a 10% lift in engagement. Now, first-time participants in Hewlett-Packard Company organized extra hands volunteering, so these are your typical hands-on efforts, experience a 9% increase in engagement compared to those who are not participating at all. And then those who are participating in a skills-based volunteer engagement has a 13% increase in engagement. So you can see that overall, employees who are participating have increased engagement, and then very specifically, those who are involved in hands-on traditional volunteer projects have a 9% increase, and those who are involved in skills-based have a 13% increase in engagement. So a lot of great data, again, to take back to your HR team, especially if they're struggling with ways to engage employees. Well, here's a fabulous tool that you can share with them. Employee volunteering really does work. And I would encourage, when we get to the section on measurement, that this is something you guys think about. Can you come up with some data for your own company as you're surveying volunteers, your employee volunteers? This is, again, good hard data that your HR leaders, your senior leaders would love to know, I think, about your programs. All right. And so quickly, just I think as a matter of stance, if we went around the room and asked, again, who you report to, those of you at companies that are leading your efforts, you would have a myriad of different answers. So on the screen, you'll see that employee volunteering sits within many different functions at companies. There's not one best practice necessarily, although I think the closer you are to the CEO, the better, right? But some sit within community affairs, corporate citizenship departments that are just focused on community outreach and community engagement. Some are a part of your corporate foundation. Some work within HR or diversity inclusion or other similar type of department. And then 46% combine internal and external orientations. So they're in a marketing function, public affairs, that kind of role. So there is no necessarily best practice, but you are among friends here, knowing that you sit within different functions at different companies, but you're still gathered around the same goal, right? Getting your employees involved in the community. So that was a lot of good sort of context setting. Now we're going to start talking about how you actually get started and how you sort of achieve success with your program. And we think, and I think you all would agree too, that the most successful employee volunteer programs reside in this sweet spot intersection of your company's priorities and goals, the needs of the communities where your employees live and work, and then your employee interests and motivations. If you think of it like a three-legged stool, if you give one of these circles short shrift, you're not going to have a very stable seat, right? So we have seen the most successful programs have aligned themselves by meeting company priorities, community needs, employee interests, and motivations. And you can think of company priorities, things like they want to go into a new market. Well, maybe you do a volunteer project with some partners in that local market, so you're getting some good buzz in that community. Perhaps it's customer or lead generation, so you're working alongside your vendors, your suppliers, so that you're building and strengthening relationships. That could be a company priority. Or it could be better retention of employees, so maybe there's an HR goal that your employee volunteer program is trying to solve or achieve. And then community, of course. You want to be able to contribute to the things that are affecting your community members, right? That gives you good PR, great reputation building, but of course you're really hoping to move the needle on something that's impacting, some social issue that's impacting the communities where you operate. And then employee interests and motivations. Of course, here's an example. If you decide that your employee volunteer program is going to be all about literacy, right? Reading to kids, making sure people have books in their homes, but your employees really only care about animals. Do you think you're going to get a lot of participation? Probably not. I mean, some will do it because they're a part of the company and they're excited about it, but if their interests and passions are so far disconnected from your issue areas, we'll say, I think it impacts your participation overall, unfortunately. So how do you find out what your employee interests and motivations are? Well, there's several ways. These are pretty simple right on the screen. Surveys, whether they're formal or informal. You could do focus groups. You could even analyze your employees' passions by having a company-wide contest in some way, right? And then being able to track what they're engaged in. What other mechanisms? Anyone else have ideas? Have they tried this out there by surveying their employees to find out what their interests are? Anybody else have a great idea? These were the best ideas we could come up with. All right. Surveying is great.
I will share this. A couple of years ago, and I thought it was a great thing to do, especially if you're new. Someone had stepped into a role, so there were a number of preset volunteer activities. And this person spent about a year creating sort of information cards, if you will, on the participants to see who was coming up to these events, noting if they had family, whatever, and started with the data from this core group. And from there, gathered information. And so it was a slow process, and it was an informal survey, but kept information cards, seeing that there were certain people who reoccurring would say, is this one for kids? Can we bring our family? And hearing that often enough, that became the development. So it was less of a formal survey because they got a lot of feedback. My people have been too surveyed. Yes, we don't want to respond. And so I think that's another way, especially if you're walking in on a program that's already built. Mm-hmm. There may be some data there just looking at history.
Great, and a really great point too about kids. We hear this work-life balance is always an issue, with our employees. So if they're able to bring their children and family members along, again, you might boost participation. But you wouldn't know unless you're asking your employees, right, the kind of activities they want to be involved in.
Zip code tracking is really important too, keeping up with where your people are, where they live. If you're running evening and weekend activities, it's simple information to ask of your volunteers. So you don't want to be planning something in Stone Mountain if you've got people living more in Cobb County. Just something to think about in your tracking information.
They do not want to get in traffic, right? You will have drop off in participation if they have to get in Atlanta traffic. So, thinking about employee interest, again, that's one leg of the stool, and their motivations and their passions and what they really care about. Thinking of now the second leg of that stool is thinking about those issue areas that may be important to the communities and to your companies. So there's a lot of things to consider here, and we used to do a test. You know, if a company has a focus area that's sort of aligned with their business, it makes more sense. So actually, on this next slide, I'll show you. Oh, I hope you can see that. I need better, stronger glasses here.
It's pretty big behind
is it?
this
Okay,
look.
good,
Yeah.
good. But you'll see, so in this top list, I've given you some ideas of how companies have aligned with issue areas that connect to their core competencies or their brand or their employees' capabilities. So we've got some Arby's, wonderful folks in the room, so they are trying to help solving hunger issues. Bank of America, financial literacy. Apollo Education Group, you've probably not heard of them, but one of their subsidiaries is University of Phoenix. So of course they're interested in education. If in 2 seconds it doesn't make sense for a company or the connection between this cause area and their company, I think it sort of dissuades employees to get involved, right? It needs to make sense for your business, these issue areas that your company might align with. And then there's some data at the bottom here. The Points of Light runs a group very similar to the CVC, but on a national scale called the Corporate Service Council, and we've surveyed them often, and you'll see that education happens to be the number one or the biggest focus area that those companies support. So education, I think, probably, I don't know, let's do a round of hands here. Anybody else out here support education with their philanthropy or employee volunteering? Right. It's really important, and it fits within workforce development, the guys that you need to be hiring in the next few years. Of course, your current employees, it can support all of the community members around you. We know how important a great education is, so there's many, many reasons why a company would be involved there. But I will tell you that there is, of course, some cons to limiting yourself to some of these focus areas, and a lot of it connects back to what I was saying about employee engagement. If you limit yourself to solely focusing on literacy when all of your employees care about animals, you're going to have a drop-off in participation. So what we've seen is there are ways to have very strong focus areas, but also allow your employees to have some flexibility to find out what their passions are, to be involved in projects that get them engaged in that passion area. And I think that is a best practice for employee volunteer programs. Having some signature programs that support the company's cause area or areas, but also allowing for some flexibility so employees can do things that they're really passionate about. And if you happen to not have focus areas now for your program as you're beginning to think about them, as you're starting out, there's a movement afoot in corporate America and actually around the world, I should say, to support the United Nations new Sustainable Development Goals. There's 17 of them on here. You'll probably be hearing more and more if you stay in tune with the employee volunteer sector. There's actually a group of companies who are leading this, a corporate sector-led collaboration to mobilize employee volunteers around these cause areas. And there are simple things like clean water and sanitation, life on land, quality education, et cetera. So you'll be hearing more about this. There's a corporate initiative called Impact 2030. The hope is to achieve a lot of these goals by the year 2030. The United Nations is leading this effort, and this corporate group is called Impact 2030. And if you're interested in more information, I'd absolutely say check out the website impact2030.com. So some things to think about. And if those of you have companies focus areas already, you will sound very smart when you come back to your office and say, look, we are already supporting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals because we have programs that support quality education. You're already halfway there, right? All right, so that's a little bit about getting started. I'm going to turn it over to my friend Cheryl to talk a little bit more about building your program.
I really hope that I can remember to advance the slides at the same time I talk. I don't know that I can multitask, but we'll give it a go. So I do want to talk about building your program, and I really apologize. If you need me to, I can stand up so that I can see you. It's hard to see around the podium, but when you're building your program, and if you've inherited a program, I want to speak to that as well. But when you're starting out, you're actually lucky because no one has done it before. Whatever you do, it's right.
Yes.
Because it can't be wrong. And you're really lucky in that way. But I do think Katie gave a lot of valuable information about if you are at that place, starting out and being thoughtful. Don't be so quick to just launch. You can have volunteer events and do some team building, but at the same time, take your time to develop a structure around what you're developing and be thoughtful around it. Be thoughtful from the business perspective, but you have to be thoughtful about what your volunteers want. I say it all the time. Javaris is probably sick of hearing it, but you don't have a program if you don't have people. Your volunteers are your precious asset. Mm-hmm. I mean, they truly are. Treat them as such. Everything about what you do with a volunteer event should be an experience, and you want them to have it to be the best that it can possibly be. And so about that, take your time, go slow. You don't have to fill the calendar immediately. But along the way, and I don't know where you sit, this is going to come up a lot. I am so fortunate now to sit in HR. When I started this program, I did not. I started, believe it or not, I was a reference librarian. So I started it in the library, and I had this skill of trademark, whatever, anyway, working with the IP group, which I loved, and I didn't want to give up the work in that area. So I was kind of still doing a little trademark work sitting in the library. Well, it really doesn't help you with doing some of the things you need to do. This is very much a human resources function, and I'm going to talk about that several times in my slides. If you are not well connected to your HR folks, make sure you find a path to get connected with them. In order to be able to do a lot of what you do in structuring, you will need to know people and need to be able to talk through things with HR professionals. We're going to talk a little bit further today, but you need to develop that roadmap that gets you started, but maybe helps you think long term. This is not about my community service. It is on the other side of the house because I'm 50-50, the pro bono aspect of things. Here at our firm, because our firm is well over, in fact, next year we celebrate 125 years. That's an old law firm. Pro bono has been around for a long time. If you've been in Atlanta, you know United Way. Some of our lawyers helped found United Way as it was founded years ago. We founded, we founded Atlanta Legal Aid, one of 16 lawyers in 1924. So part of what I inherited was there. And building that structure, we talked about a 95 member, that's primarily the pro bono side of the house. One of the things we did back in 2000, we talked about it in 2005. By 2006, we decided we needed to do it. And in 2007, we did it. We actually have conducted our own strategic planning. It was a 5-year plan. I can tell you it was a 23-page report. We have successfully checklisted everything off of that plan, but it was very thoughtful. We used a consultant to help us do it. It was short-termed, but it really gave us that vision, that roadmap. Now, it was a huge investment and commitment of time we're a billable hour environment. Where's the Deloitte in the house over here? You know what I'm talking about. Somebody comes to a meeting, you make it snappy. We keep them crisp around here because every minute is money here. And because of that, we kept this in a 3-month period, and the result was published at the end of that 3-month period. So you can do a mini vision for yourself. Bring together some key stakeholders within the company. Organize. There are plenty of resources on strategic planning. Do your own mini vision and come up with a roadmap that's really going to work. We're going to talk about budgets and how you evaluate and all of those things, and timelines too. it's all really important as you move forward. So we talked about this before, the people in this room. I hope when we circulate this list, if you don't know people in here, get together after this. Cheryl's going to send the list around of who was here. Make a coffee date with somebody in the room, a company or an organization that caught your ear. I might like to ask them questions. I will tell you, in Katie's part of my circle, there is a small group, my network, in this area that I go to. And we go, in fact, this week, we had a go-to in my little small group, and it was a question about oversized T-shirts. Who's the vendor? Because vendors stock T-shirts up to a certain size. I don't know what I would do on a day-to-day without my network. Build your own. Start today. If you think you've got a network, you can always add to your network. It's really critical to help you succeed in your career and to make your program successful. We learn from each other. I think it's the greatest compliment in the world if I hear about something somebody's doing and I think, oh, we can do that too. So
yes, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
It
right?
really is.
Very true.
And you know, it's not just people who are in your role. You know, I look outside the role that I'm in, and there's one. I'm supposed to be her mentor, but I think she mentors me just as much. And it's a young executive director of a nonprofit who has started a phenomenal organization, and it's 3 years old. And I see what she's doing and how she operates. Jabaris is someone I look up to in the way that he networks. You can learn from anyone. Develop your network. Your vendors, believe you me, I had an emergency yesterday, and my tried and true vendor is somebody that I really count on for the gadgets and items, and I need something in less than 7 days, and he's going to make it happen. So, you know, build that strong network to make you succeed. And do it before you have the crisis, I'm just telling you. But you can build great networks in a crisis as well. So,
all right. So just as Cheryl talked about, as you get started, you might think about pulling some internal stakeholders to help you come up with that roadmap, especially those who are influential within the company. Or it could be just your peers, you know, or those pesky millennials, sorry if some of you are in the room, who always have great ideas and are always coming up with something innovative, right? Let's pull them together and talk about how we're going to create that roadmap to be successful. And as we know, since you, human beings in this room, can't be in all of your company's offices or locations or in each department, if you have a smaller company, you're going to need to create an infrastructure that can help you lead this program in those different offices or within those different departments. And so we think developing the right infrastructure is really important to your success. So that, to me, means finding those internal champions of your volunteer program. They can be individual employees who are very passionate about giving back. Like I said, those millennials who have so much energy and they want an opportunity to lead something. Finding those individual champions are going to take you far. Or, as some of the companies that we work with do, they set up councils or committees in each of those offices or departments. So the burden of planning and leading a project doesn't fall to just one employee. And I think the vast majority of companies do have some type of infrastructure that helps scale and lead this program in those different offices, different geographies. If you're talking about, you know, global locations too, you can't be on the ground with those folks. So how are you nurturing those individual employee champions or committee members to help do your job for you in that way? And there are a lot of considerations up on the screen you'll see about which sort of structure you might pick. What's your capacity? If you're a staff of one, getting 95 folks together to talk about volunteering each quarter might be a hard job. But if you have a big team and can handle that, that might be something that you guys will look at. So a lot of different considerations when you're building out the right infrastructure. And quickly, here's just an example of what it could look like. And there are a million different versions of what an infrastructure behind an employee volunteer program looks like. This is a very simple one. So those of you down at the bottom, let's see, we'll start there. Those are all your employees, right? Those are all potential volunteers. And then in this scenario, there is a committee in each office, we'll say, around the world where this company operates. A member of that council reports into this leadership level called the Volunteer Advisory Council. They probably get together once a quarter with the community relations team. That's over on the, whoops, there you go. We'll pretend that's you guys in the room, that community relations team, regardless of your title or whatever department you work within. They're the ones in charge of all of it. But they meet with that Volunteer Advisory Council once a quarter, whether it's through email or an actual conference call or a webinar, and they're sharing information so that leader can then take it back to their local council. And then, of course, at the top is an executive sponsor. We think, of course, buy-in from senior management really will take you far, helping you, knock down obstacles, hopefully, recruit more employees because they're going to be out at a project or they're sending the communication. So an executive sponsor is also a part of this infrastructure that helps support you and your volunteer efforts. And some of the stats we've got, GE, they have 252 local community councils around the world. Imagine trying to manage that kind of structure. And then my old job at Home Depot, Team Depot, we had a captain in every retail store. So those were the way I made sure volunteer projects were going on in the communities where we had stores. So we had individual employee champions. GE has committees of 10 to 20 employees who are really passionate about it. It's up to you to decide what makes the most sense for your company. All right. Moving on now. So you've got some thoughts around infrastructure. Let's now talk about the different types of activities that you could include in your program. And this is a slide. You're going to get a copy of this, a blank version of this in the supplemental materials that we'll send you afterwards. I might have to stand up. Now I'm all excited. Okay, so this is called the Spectrum of Service. And it's something that Taproot Foundation, which is a really smart organization very much around skills-based volunteering, if you've heard of them, they developed this a few years ago, but it is absolutely a great visual to help you understand probably all the things you're already doing that fit within the spectrum of service. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the top, we're going to talk about nonprofit needs, and then the middle row, the gray, is the type of support that companies provide, and then at the bottom are just some examples of how this works. So the top row, nonprofit needs, making budget, right? Nonprofits need to be able to deliver services and make money. So some companies are involved in financial support for these nonprofits, whether that's grant making, having a Dollars for Doers, or matching gifts program, or workplace giving campaign, those types of activities. And then nonprofit needs, moving over one column here, they need extra hands to actually deliver their services and programs out into the community. They need bodies, right? So that can take the form of hands-on volunteering, things you're probably familiar with, cleaning up a playground, planting trees or a community garden, serving food at a soup kitchen. Then you're moving over farther to the right here. You'll see now we're starting to talk about skills-based volunteering. So some nonprofits run tutoring programs or literacy programs. These are using employees' general skills, that everyone possesses, right? And this is the way they're still supporting nonprofits to deliver their services and programs. And then farther over to the right, we're helping nonprofits with their infrastructure needs and leadership. And that takes the form of a little bit more sophisticated skills-based volunteering. So you've got board service, and to be completely transparent, I think board service belongs on the last column, because it is, to me, sort of the highest form of support that you can provide a nonprofit. But you also have then pro bono expertise. And this is, we'll talk about this in just a second too, but this is the real professional skills and abilities that your employees can provide to a nonprofit. So it's setting up their IT network, or helping them run an audit for their own financial needs. So some real very skilled talents that go on over here in pro bono, which Cheryl knows a lot about, we know. So just to recap those definitions. Here we go. So hands-on volunteering, you guys all know what this means, right? That traditional hearts and hands, what do you call that? Manual labor, I guess, sort of. When we think about hands-on or traditional volunteering. And then because there are some nuances between these terms, we like to provide definitions. So skills-based volunteering, to me, is a broad category, and it's using any type of skill to support a nonprofit. And it can be something as simple as, I like photography, and I'm going to go to a nonprofit because they are creating a new brochure, and I'm going to use my fabulous photography skills to help them with that. But pro bono service means that I am doing the same thing I would normally get paid to do. So this becomes that. So in my day job, I consult with other companies to build employee volunteer programs. And if I were to go to a nonprofit and consult in some way, that would be more aligned with pro bono service. You guys see the difference there? Don't get caught up into semantics, though, because either one is a fabulous way to be serving. And some companies, I think, lean toward general skills so more employees can get involved rather than really or they have very signature programs where their employees that have specific talents can get involved in doing actual pro bono work, like our lawyer friends. We're very important.
Katie, I have a question.
Please.
When you have employees who actually do those tasks, for instance, if they're going to schools to provide financial literacy or to a nonprofit, but it's actually a part of their job.
Yes, pro bono is what I would say. Unless, all right, Matt draws a line. It's a general skill they're using to deliver that. I'm going to guess maybe it's JA or something, a financial literacy workshop. The skills they're using there are tied to their profession, but also they're using sort of general skills, speaking in public, helping, mentoring and that sort of aspect. So I could see that riding the line, especially if you're a financial services company. It's sort of both.
It is riding the line. Here we have to do, I'll give an example, and this was this morning. We have a lot of lawyers who help kids with moot court. So truthfully, that's mentoring and working with kids. Now they have to do legal outlines using substantial law, which is what they do to prep those kids who are then going to develop their own research and then develop the arguing skills. But because we track that time and we have to separate in the legal community exactly what is pro bono and what is community service. And it's two very different things. They have to, on their own, separate what time they've done. Yes, so it's definitely a combination.
Great question, though. All right, and then here's some examples of different types of skills-based volunteer programs that are out there in the world. There's a variety of different ways you could implement a skills-based volunteer program. And again, a lot of considerations about what works best for your company. But for those of you who probably are partners with United Way, you've probably heard of loaned employees or loaned executives before. That's very simple. It's a sort of one-on-one transaction. One employee is going to be embedded in a nonprofit to help them with their needs over a certain amount of time. You might also have a marathon model, that's somewhere up there, which is what you would think of those creative hackathons or design-a-thons. So these are the 12-hour or 24-hour long blitz of branding for local nonprofits. There's one here I know. I think it's called
48 and 48.
There you go. They build 48 websites for 48 different. They build websites for 48 different nonprofits in the matter of 24 hours, right? So really exciting, all event-based, but probably hard to do if you have offices all over the world, right? You'd have to run a marathon event in each one of those offices. But you could instead have some standardized team projects. So this is maybe a strategy challenge. You ask your nonprofits what their specific needs are around skills-based, the skills that your employees can lend to them, and then you create a team of employees to help serve that nonprofit's needs, and that team might have different skills. It might have a graphic designer, it might have an HR person or a finance person or a procurement person involved so that they're getting the best value possible on that team to help solve that need that they have. So several different ways that you can run a skills-based program that are impactful to your nonprofits that you partner with. All right. So here's one of my other favorite slides. We call this the kissing triangle. So there are many different activities, like I said, that you can include in your program. And as you see, the helping hands, I gotta stand up again. Whew, flapping the arms today. So helping hands down here. Oh, I touched your screen.
No, it won't go anywhere.
So helping hands, this, and if you look at the side over here, number of employees engaged from high to low, right? You can get a ton of employees out there if you're planting trees or building a playground. And then as you move up the triangle, you start to realize you're engaging fewer and fewer employees. But on the flip side, you are still creating tremendous value even if you have fewer employees involved. So we know nonprofits need extra hands at soup kitchens to serve food, right? They wouldn't be able to do it if they didn't have volunteers. So you're involving a ton of employees and you're helping them deliver services. But where the real impact can be for that nonprofit to make sure they have leadership, there are strong finances, et cetera, is up the scale here where you're only involving probably a handful of employees. So this shows you that correlation between number of employees engaged and the impact you're providing to your nonprofit partners. Does that make sense? One of my favorite slides.
That's a great slide.
It's fabulous, isn't it?
Yes,
Thank you. Again, I didn't make it, but
It's really good.
I can share with you good knowledge. All right, so here's more. This is also exciting, okay, but I'll sit down. I get all sorts of excited about this. So this is new research. Well, it's sort of new. It's probably 2 years old now that Points of Light commissioned CEB, a corporate executive board, if you're familiar with that sort of think tank organization. They helped us better understand a subset of employees from like 1,000 different companies that they surveyed to find out what employees' motivations were to get involved in their employees' volunteer program, in their employer's volunteer program. And what they found out, got to build here, people.
Wow.
There we go. Okay, so nearly half of your population, if we use this as an average company, 49% of your employees are social oriented, which means they want to do projects that make a real impact. They want to understand the impact, but they're also motivated by fun, by volunteering alongside their peers, with their family members. They want to see this as a sort of social endeavor, we'll say, right? They like working alongside people. They want to have some fun. But then you've got 26% of your workforce that are probably career-oriented. And the projects that they're more interested in help them build their resume. They are more, they would lean more toward a skills-based or pro bono opportunity. And sort of using that opportunity to meet colleagues, to better their network, and sort of advance their career. Then my favorite part of the slide is that 24% just don't care. They either decide that volunteering isn't as impactful as you say it is, or they just don't want to get involved maybe with their employer's workplace volunteer program. Maybe they're doing things on their own, or maybe they, like I said, just don't think volunteering makes a difference. So what this slide means to me is set realistic goals for yourself. We do have some companies I know of that have reached 100% participation in some of their volunteer efforts, but it is rare because you're still dealing with this sort of quarter of your workforce that just doesn't necessarily want to get involved. So you can all relax now, right? See, it's better this way with some facts that'll tell you that you don't have to worry about them. So know that you have employees who are motivated by different things, social versus career. But you could also consider a generational lens. We love our millennials, but how many Gen Xers do we have in the room here? Good, there's about 2 of us. That's fabulous.
I counted 3.
Did you think? So you can also think about your employees as different generations, right? So millennials, very purpose-driven. We hear about this all the time. A lot of great research is going into millennials because they're going to eventually be 75% of the workforce. However, 66% of them, according to, I think, another great Deloitte study, have one foot out the door. So they may not be a part of your program for very long. Boomers, baby boomers, very ready to serve, right? They might be thinking about ways, what they're going to do after they retire, and maybe they want to get involved with a nonprofit to continue that service.
I'm into it.
You are, for sure. She is very into it. And then who would have guessed the poor Gen Xers, who are often forgotten about, don't we, have the highest volunteer rate of America based on some data I will show you here. Here's some data. This is provided by the Corporation for National and Community Service, and they look at volunteer trends just in America over a certain period of time, and you'll see, where am I? Red line. So Gen Xers, we're the best. Thank you very much. And then you got your young folks sort of below. But just know that you could also better understand your workforce and what they're motivated by or what their interests are based on generations. Then because there's still another lens you can look at, and that's purpose. So this is a new topic. It's very buzzword heavy, but you can also think about the motivations of your employees around purpose. So new research by a company called Imperative and our friends at LinkedIn suggest that 37% of the global workforce is purpose-oriented, meaning they are motivated to work by serving a higher purpose, and it's not about achievement or making more money. And it shows that purpose-oriented workers are engaged and more likely to be leaders, to stay at their companies, to promote the brand, to find meaning in their work if they're offered opportunities to serve out their purpose. So again, you've got a lot of things to think about there. You've got employee motivations, career versus social, their age, or the generation they fall within, whether or not they're purpose-oriented. And what all of this wraps up to is meeting employees where they are. So this just happens to have the career-oriented and the social-oriented on the other side, and the types of projects that might appeal to the different types of employee motivations. Again, social-oriented, you see the family volunteering and the hands-on projects. Right in the middle are things that might appeal to both career-oriented and social-oriented. But what I'm trying to say here is your employees are probably all over the place, not all over the place in a bad way, but there are many things to consider. And the more variety you provide them and the more flexibility, the more participation you're going to have. So having different types of programs, not just doing hands-on, not just doing skills-based, not just doing, one specific type of activity, playground builds over and over and over again. That variety is going to help increase participation and engagement in your program.
Yeah. When you look at participation, are there any numbers that show trends? Because we're getting ready to launch an EVP program, or am I going too far?
No. 30. So the average participation rate for companies is 30%. Our friends at CECP, if you're familiar with the Committee for Encouraging Corporate Philanthropy, they do an amazing job of benchmarking each year, both philanthropy and giving, so philanthropy and giving, as well as volunteering. And 30% is pretty average. We also run an annual survey called the Civic 50, and 29 to like 33%. So again, 30% is really a humongous goal to achieve, and you should all pat yourselves on the back. I know it sounds low, but again, thinking about different motivations, different interests, 30% is actually fabulous to achieve. And we would say maybe if you're on the higher level of engagement, you might hit 35%. But again, 100%, very rare. And I know one company who did it, and it involved calling every employee to say, track your hours, report your hours, or else we're not going to be able to know 100%. So. That's a great question, too. I think it really depends on what you want to track and what you're able to track. Is it unique volunteers, or is it recurring volunteers? And to be honest, companies, we all sort of measure apples against oranges, because some of us count contractors and friends and family. But I would say it's unique volunteers over the course of time, over the course of a year maybe is what you're tracking. So engagement in all of the programs that you might have. Got it. Back to Cheryl.
Thank you, Katie. So now let's talk about some supporting programs. And before I actually talk about, it's called, here we see supporting programs, but I would also say connected programs. Before we do that, I want to talk about why these things are important. Because you could still have none of these extra things and still run a volunteer program and have activities with meaning and all of those things. I know Katie, and I'll get her to talk a little bit more about the Civic 50. In the introductions, you heard we're a great place to work. Racetrack, I know, Deloitte. There are a number of organizations in this room that work with the Great Place to Work Institute. And for years, for the number of years we've been participating, Alston and Bird has been involved with that institution. It's out in California. It's actually a global looking at workplace cultures. It was founded on the premise that you build better communities when you build great companies. And so one of the things that you constantly want to do is look at the whole, the entirety. It's not just an employee volunteer program. Everything is interconnected, and all of it builds what we want in our organizations, a healthy, robust culture. So, and outside of that, you're taking your people out into the community and you're carrying that forward. So when we talk about supporting programs, only you know your culture. I say you, but it's you and your organization. You know what works. I mentioned we're a billable hour environment. There are many considerations when you're in a billable hour environment that you consider. It's very interesting to me sometimes working with organizations that are not professional service, that the more relaxed meeting settings and the quickness to say, let's have a meeting, because here you'll quickly set up a conference call and accomplish business. And if it takes 15 minutes, great, there's no reason to fill the hour. People are busy. And I have the feeling more and more that has become the case. So when we talk about being a great place to work, one of the things, and I shared this with you because the Civic 50 as well, sometimes these programs where you actually participate in an evaluation of what you have developed, it helps you learn what you don't have in your company or your culture in supporting programs and what might be effective. The Great Place to Work process, if you participate in their culture audit, I don't really know the total number of hours that it takes, but the evaluation includes evaluating everything about our culture, our demographics, our numbers, our salaries. There is so much information that HR provides about our institution itself, just factual. Then there is supplemental material where we talk about the details of all the supporting programs we have. Then there is a very comprehensive employee survey. The consultants with Great Place to Work bring all those pieces back together and evaluate where we have disconnects. Are we saying one thing and we're thinking one thing because we built this fine program, and our employees are coming back and saying, I don't even like any of these. So it really is a reality check each year for us to get that kind of feedback. And I know the Civic 50 does the same thing. You're really seriously scrutinizing what you have and getting feedback. So I recommend both of these. There may be other ways to evaluate your workplace, but I do say it may not be what you want to start in your infancy, but do pay attention to what other companies are doing. I pointed to Racetrack because I spent some time speaking last year with the folks from Racetrack at Great Place to Work, and they really have spent a period of time, and I'm assuming you're part of that, in really evaluating what other companies have and do and how they're doing it, and moving towards implementation of things that would be effective in your environment, because you've got locations all around. Yes. Exactly. It's a fabulous thing. So I share all of that. And the Civic 50, check it out. I mean, all of these, it takes time to go through the evaluation, but there's value in it for you. You get some feedback. So I'm just curious, show of hands, how many of you are connected to an HR department?
Yay, good.
Yay.
Working together or within it?
Within it. It's like my best friend. I'm so grateful. Excellent. And I'll tell you why, and seriously, I can't say it enough. All of these things in deciding on policy issues, you've got to have a good connection, good communication, and the only way you're going to be able to move forward on policies is to have that relationship built. For me, it's helpful to be in HR when I hear things going wrong. Many times the HR people hear it first, they'll come to me and we're able to resolve issues. But all of these things, HR tends to hear at some point. Is there a need to do other things? Employee relief, and we'll get to that in a minute, but one of the funniest things that I think, when we didn't have a dollars for doers, and I was coming to CVC meetings back in, 2004, 2005, and everybody's talking about them, and I'm thinking, that is the greatest thing in the world. We need a dollars for doers. And I thought, how am I going to get a policy? So I called, and nobody really had one that they really were read. Everybody was, I don't know, let me check, whatever. I will never forget, use Google too. I found the best dollars for doers. It was a Hellman's mayonnaise, dollars for doers. But I don't even know if it's still out there, but it was great. And so I had a framework to build some policy from, and then I went back to our HR folks, and through SHRM membership, they have a fabulous library. And so they were able to pull some great sample policies as well. And I also needed that because there's certain language, and this is really important. We just did a thorough evaluation 2 years ago. There's certain language you really want to include if your company or firm participates in the HRC survey in order to get 100% all of your policies, whether it's community service, volunteering, grant writing, I don't care what it is, it has to have this consistent language. So we were able to go back and lock hands with our HR department. The HRC survey is incredibly important here at Alston and Byrd, and we evaluated every piece of our policy, made sure that all of our language was consistent. So this is the other reason. But when it comes to any of these things, I'm going to talk a little more about things like risk management. Once again, you've really got to work within your organization. Yes.
Just so I understand, what is dollars for doers? Is that like you reward employees for volunteering with like incentives or?
Our policy is built totally on people who commit and complete a set number of hours, and we require our people to do it at one organization. You can do it multiple places. I don't really care, but you have to meet that minimum threshold with one organization. I think individual volunteering, they fill out a contract at the beginning of the year, and they state that they will be doing this. So I generally know budget-wise what I'm looking at for the payout. And so they submit those forms back, and they have until the end of the year to complete their number of hours, and then their organization gets a payout.
Is that very common? Because we have
a lot of companies.
Reward points that are similar on a like health and wellness type. But I don't know that I've ever heard of that. Is that common?
This is very common, and there are plenty of policies. They can be tweaked according to what your environment needs, but it's great for organizations because organizations, once the volunteer has completed this, gets a check. It's like a grant. Mm-hmm. So it's a fabulous thing. Lots of sample policies out there. Cheryl's probably got some she can share, but you may want to customize it based on what your employees.
So the employees get the benefit of their pay to volunteer, or just the organization?
No, the organization. They're doing it.
I need clarification.
Yes, exactly. Their organization, and they name that with hours. They name their organization at the beginning of the year. Also, so that's something we watch carefully.
It's dependent probably on each company.
Yes, we framed it in a certain way because once again, I mentioned our policies. Some of the organizations that might be church-based, we have to take a look at those. Right. So it's all
a way of rewarding
their volunteering
interest and what they're passionate about. Awesome.
Yeah, and I would say it's very
a matching gift program, but that's just like a
right dollars for dollar.
Match.
Right, this is hours for dollars almost, and it's
yes, we do.
It's very well. It's very. well loved, I would guess. A lot of companies have Dollars for Doers programs, but we do have research that says to lower the thresholds because sometimes it's hard for employees to meet that threshold of 100 hours in a year or something, and then that organization gets a $500 grant. So lowering thresholds, again, helps making sure employees take advantage of it, or having low thresholds.
And so we'll talk a little bit about things like flex time, paid time off, disaster volunteerism. And I just want to say about this, once again, if you don't have policy, this is where you really need to sit down and speak with your HR professionals, trying to structure some of these factors like, sorry, I forgot to hit the slide. I'd already turned the page, sorry. Some of these things, definitely depending on the status of your employee, you're hitting on things like here we have a very generous PTO policy, and this comes up quite often with we've got everybody wins and people trying to figure out their lunch hour and filling out their time cards, and how you really need to look carefully at how you state your policy, and it needs to be flushed through with your HR professionals because you're talking about labor laws, and what you don't want to end up doing is paying overtime to employees for volunteering. So this is a critical part. If you don't have the benefit of being in HR, when you pull sample policies, be careful about implementation until you've had an HR professional review some of those things. And then we're talking about organizations that qualify. If depending on how you structure, some people have no problems with people doing all their volunteer work in churches. Our policy is stated as such, and we have given credit for people who are working in food banks or faith-based organizations, but it's not the church. And we are careful at looking at what those things are. We actually, on our Dollars for Doers, did provide funding for one person who was working at a food bank that was based out of her church, but it serviced the community at large. So anyway, those are just things to consider as you're trying to figure out what you want to do and how you do it.
This is my favorite slide. This is mine.
You go, girl.
This is my third favorite slide, right? So when I work with companies, one thing I've realized, and some of them are brand new, just starting out building their program, and some have long-standing programs. But the funny thing that I've realized is that none of them necessarily have guidelines. So as Cheryl was talking about policies for paid time off, you really do need to have a policy around volunteering in general. Your employees want to know what's expected of them, right? And the best way to tell them what's expected of them is to write it down. Not saying that it can't change over time, but knowing what you want them to be doing out in the community, what they should be reporting and tracking, so that you have good data, etc. And every company is different. And what I've realized in my consulting work is that hardly any companies actually stop and write this information down and make it available to employees.
And even if you write it down, believe me, your employees will test you.
Yes,
they do.
Yes.
They ask a million questions and you go, I've never thought of that.
Right. And the best thing to sort of circumvent that is writing it down and being like, well, please check out our volunteer policy that is available on the intranet, right? And so this is a quick test here. Make sure you guys are still awake and eating cookies. Would you, in your employee volunteer program, or for those of us nonprofit friends in the room, maybe in your own personal opinion, would you consider running in a charity race volunteerism? No. How about the act of donating to a collection drive, bringing in that Toys for Tot gift? No. How about time spent training for that race or time spent at Target shopping for that Toys for Tots gift? This is great. How about, though, the hours spent planning a volunteer project if you happen to be a volunteer leader, perhaps? Would you count that? Great. How about the time spent giving blood, that hour or so it takes? Maybe. We're starting to get the gray area here. How about attending a bowl-a-thon or a charity golf tournament? Is that volunteering? Maybe. And then we actually work with one company, CSAA Insurance. They're a AAA insurer on the West Coast. They actually allow employees to report volunteer time. I think it's 365 hours, so an hour each day, for the time spent being a foster parent and for fostering animals. I think they count, I can't remember what the number of counts, but those employees who are taking it upon themselves to support a nonprofit, an animal rescue, they're fostering animals, and they actually have employees report that information. And all that's to say is every company is different, but you do need to write some of this information down because it will save you, hopefully, some of the headache of all the calls and questions. You can point them towards something. And again, you can evolve this over time, right? You start getting 1 million employees who are asking about tracking their fostering of animals. Maybe it's something you want to look at and add to your policy.
But be careful. I will add to this that, and this was one of our HR professionals, because we put examples, volunteering at events such as Habitat, Everybody Wins, and we broke it down. And so if an employee came in and asked if they could go read to a child at their, well, I don't know, another school thing, it's not in the policy. So when I tell you your employees will test you, have somebody not connected to you look at your policy, maybe 2 or 3 people, just to test you, because your employees will. Yes. I'm just telling you. Yes.
In anyone's opinion, so we give our employees 32 hours of volunteering a year. And we say you can volunteer at any nonprofit or a school. Well, the question I keep getting is, can I take my 32 hours and take 4 days off and take my kids' class to Disney World? Is that, I don't have children, so I'm sorry, but I think no. I mean, my thing is working in the school, doing something at the school related to learning. Mm-hmm. Disney's a lovely place, but that's a vacation. So
right.
Just wanted to see if that has ever come up in anyone's.
It has with me personally. When I first started here at Alston and Byrd, and I wanted to go and help at my daughter's summer camp, and it was an overnight camp, and that did not qualify. I had to take my own PTO, which was fine. I would have done it anyway. Now, the reverse is we had someone in our HR department who worked every summer at a special needs camp, and she volunteered to run, like she was running activities and such at that camp. And because she was leading, this was just me going and accompanying, because she was actually leading the work, she was given community service time. So I think there are variables. We've been tested recently and it's a nonprofit. We have someone here who is an equestrian. She lives at Stables. Her Stables happens to have a nonprofit, and we gave her, there was a big charitable event that she was helping with, set up, clean stalls, do all the prep work, but it's turned into a perpetual. There are horse shows now. I'm telling you, you can be tested. Just telling you. Have other people look at your policies.
Yes or no?
Right, yes.
I say no to that one.
Right.
If there's some educational component to it, perhaps.
And I even asked that. I said,
Right.
well, what are they going to do when they get there?
Right.
They're going to go on rides? I'm like,
But it's a very good point right there, Christy. Exactly. All right.
So I do have a question about that, because we post a lot of things on our intranet, but how you word it. We're looking for volunteers to join the team for the bowl-a-thon.
Right.
So employees would assume it's a volunteer
Exactly.
project.
Exactly.
So, are you finding that we would have to, because we're getting ready to launch, but there's a lot of ambiguity around what constitutes as volunteering.
That's right.
Suggestions: do you have a work-life coordinator, or do you have a good health team? Partner up with them so that they have their own incentive program. Utilize that. We here utilize the other committee groups. This is why we collaborate so closely, because they've got their own incentives. And so we're able to say we want to support this and we want people to volunteer to build a team, but it becomes a joint thing and you use their incentives, not yours.
I just have a question for that, or just in general tracking. So is the reason that you track or you say things are volunteer events or they aren't because you get the incentive with the dollars for doers, or like we semi-track but we aren't very strict because we don't really do anything. Like we do track in terms of like numbers of volunteers, but like I would think like for do the charity golf thing, we would definitely count it if they spent a whole day out.
But is it right? It's totally up to you. Totally up to your policy.
Why do you track?
So for our professionals, our attorneys, they know how to track and they track on their own. I'm not worried about them. These are staff who are a different category of employee. Overtime does come into play. They're given, it's a total of 15. Yes. And some of these, honestly, should be PTO. I mean, so they're trying to interpret your policy and they come up with these things that you're going, it's kind of in the gray. So, it depends on the category of your employee as well. Yep. Our professionals know how to track their time on the legal side, the lawyers. It becomes really where you have some of the staff employees that they're trying to figure it out.
And we have to track just from a PR standpoint.
There's that.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That those numbers externally and say, UCB gave 10,000 hours of volunteerism just in opportunities like that.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I do have a question from like a professional services perspective. Would you have, if you had two different systems, one for totally tracking hours for volunteering, like an angel point system, versus your time entry system?
Yes.
Do the hours need to reconcile, or could you see it? Okay.
We're trying to finish up with Volunteer Match as the system because it has been such a problem using our timekeeper system. I mean, you can do it, but we're losing a lot of time that way. So I'm going to talk a little bit about disaster relief here, which is really important as you plan your program. Plan ahead. As you're building your program, I know there's so many other things that you have to think of, but put this on your list to think ahead. And I tell you why. There are a number of things. One of the things that we've found when disaster strikes, and this goes back to Katrina when we didn't have the technology to be able to help our employees talk with one another, but by the time Hurricane Sandy came along, we did. And that is really building some communication tool for employees. Setting up a blog. We've got a blog that we keep activated. One of the most important things that happens when disaster strikes, particularly if it's something that is going to affect you, your employees direct, your employees' families. I know last year there was a tornado that flew through Texas and a number of our employees were panicked, and over the weekend, while we're all, here safe and sound in our house, we did have an employee who was impacted. And so that being able to connect people in a communication means to communicate. This is also where when disaster strikes, and I can't say this enough, make sure that you are well acquainted with the person in your HR department who is more than likely, and it may be somebody in your benefits, but it may be just somebody in the operations team. There's going to be somebody who's going to get a call or get an email about employees who are being impacted. You need to make sure that you're a point of contact. You're a direct link to social services. They're a direct link to benefits. You're a person who will have already developed a plan and had it in place. So it's really important that you think ahead when you're watching that news and you're seeing something terrible just happened in California, and you've got an office, and you don't know what the outcome is, immediately email your HR person, but also get on the phone or email whoever your IT person is and make sure your blog or whatever your internal communication tool is up. Already know who your partners are. already flushed that out. We went through a situation a couple of years ago. Once again, the faith-based things become very sensitive, and all of the major religions have emergency services, and we kind of had to overcome because we actually had one of our partners, we had lined up certain key partners, American Red Cross and Salvation Army, because historically that's what we'd always done. But we had a number of people from another faith who were very involved with some emergency services with their particular faith and their emergency operations. So kind of think all that through too. If you're a big corporation, there may be some guidelines, but know who your partners are. Pay attention to what their press releases are. Have that information up. Once again, I go back to your network, my small network of 5 professionals that I email about everything. As soon as disaster strikes, I send an email. What are you doing? Last year, when the shooting took place in Orlando, and as we were watching the shootings that had taken place and the protests taking place across the country, that network became very important to me to know how companies were responding, what they were doing, and what are things to do. You were one of the first people I called, and Generation On was fabulous because they had a great, just a letter writing campaign that was wonderful. So we were able to quickly get letters written and send those directly to Orlando. So I can't say enough. Look at that. If there's a CVC program on that or a lunch and learn that's held that you can attend, go, because you learn about resources. But it is very difficult, and you will be scrambling if disaster strikes and you haven't thought about it. Your employees will want to help. So this friends and family boils down to your program, your company, and what your employees want. Family volunteering here is huge. Long before it became a trend and there was a pebble tossers and all of this, our attorneys who are billable and many times here long hours, we're asking for this. So I ask you, as you develop your policies, if there are age limits, and we're going to talk about the age limits because there are reasons sometimes you cannot have little people, and that has to do with whoever your partner might be. Many of the organizations ask up front, do they have age limits, age requirements, physical limitations? Know your company and know their policies. Here, I know whom handles our firm's insurance policies. It's kind of critical. You will get questions. Last year, once again, when disasters actually struck, we had an employee who wanted to hold a big gathering of goods and drive a vehicle to Louisiana. And, it became a big issue of resolving, is this person doing this on her own time or is it firm supported? What happens? Is this a liability? Where do we've had volunteers. We have a summer intern program, young lawyers coming. We've got a volunteer event and somebody's driving interns and they were in a car accident on the way there. So there are lots of things to look at. First aid, I can't say enough about that. We run CPR programs throughout the year, so we try to ensure at our volunteer events we've got somebody on hand who can help with all of that. We have a medical kit that goes with us when we go to these events, but we carry our own and also know first part of the training 911, but we do make sure our people are at least briefed and know a bit about what to do. So Katie talked a little bit about this, about what motivates, and I'm not going to go into that anymore. I will say this, though. I have a concern because I am a boomer, and boomers are kind of tried and true. You can count on some of those folks. Millennials, they don't last at jobs so often, and one of the things I've seen last year was kind of heartbroken. There was a newly identified millennial here that I just thought was fabulous, and within less than 2 years, she'd moved on to another job. You know, you've got something going on. You've got the boomers who will stay here, and I mean, somebody will have to push me out the door here. But, you know, the millennials who are looking to grow and go and don't have that same loyalty to an organization. And so it does, as you're thinking about who your leads are and how you staff programs, think about that, because you do, if you're setting someone up as a leader, you're developing a program, you're training someone, you really need to take a look at, do you need to have co-leaders? How do you staff it so you're not losing your best volunteers? So we talked about this, and I'm not going to beat it to death, but as you're project planning, they're here, just, you'll get this in the handout, but the biggest thing is engage your employees in the process. We're really in a transition period here. I think a lot of people are feeling, I don't want to say burned out, but not as enthused. We've got certain programs, Everybody Wins in the room, people who've done it since we started doing it, and they've been reading for 12 years, and they're good with it. But we have a lot of other people who say, I've been doing this 5 years, I want to try something new. And right now we're hearing a big demand for what can we do that's just in the office that really has powerful impact. I don't want to be going and driving. I don't have that kind of time in a day. So, you know, you reinvent no matter where you are with your program. So we're going to talk, and I feel like we're flying through this, but I've got some funny things I wanted to get to just to share. And this is how you communicate. Some of you in the room are the communication experts, and you think about the messaging you send out. One of the things that I will say in our environment over the years, I've gotten a lot of feedback, too many emails. Many of our programs, we have sort of a set limit on how much you can communicate about one particular event. So for instance, our casual days, we have one a month. You can send out an email the week before announcing it's coming. You can send a reminder the day before. That's it. We have a calendar. It'll appear on the, on the portal, but you can't be sending multiple emails about your favorite charity and promoting your casual day. So we think about the plan, how we will do it. Are people hearing it so much they're not interested? What are the various ways that you can actually message without beating a dead horse? So I wanted to just show you an example. I know there are a lot of companies that do a day of service. We do a week. It's our Pro Bono and Community Service Week. And you better believe this takes months in planning. It's firm-wide. And the communication strategies and plans around this, you'll see we have logos. It's very branded. When it happens and the emails begin to go out, you'll know about it. But if we didn't have a communication plan for this, I don't know what we would do, because people would hate us and no one would come to anything because it's almost overwhelming. I don't know of many companies that do a full week of things, but I can tell you we've recognized that communication is critical for those kind of programs. And so I'm hoping this is going to play. It looks like it's not.
Yeah,
but maybe it will. I don't know what it is, so let's see what it is first. Have you been thinking about getting involved in a pro bono matter, but you can't seem to find which kind works for you?
Problem solved.
The pro bono team is here to help. Call 1-800-PROBONO anytime, day or night, for your free consultation.
Let us help you figure out what matters to you.
You can help an elderly person with a will, a power of attorney, or an advanced health care directive.
Finalize a contract for an up-and-coming musician.
Assist an inventor with a patent.
Represent an unaccompanied minor.
Inspect a detention center.
Help an inmate with the clemency process.
Or just partner up with the Partnership Against Domestic Violence.
Opportunities are endless, and you can get started today.
Call 1-800-PROBONO.
If you've got a phone, you've got a matter.
We guarantee that you will help someone and they will appreciate it. All pro bono costs will be written off. Hey, and don't forget, email your photos and stories of your good works to goodworks@alston.com. That's goodworks@alston.com.
Please follow us on Twitter at GoodWorksAustin. That's GoodWorks Austin. And don't forget to add us on Facebook at Pro Bono and Community Service at Austin and Bird. That's Pro Bono and Community Service at Austin and Bird.
Remember, hashtag what matters to you.
Yay! share that with you just because you can't keep sending out the same format. Think creatively about it. I mean, we have used that commercial multiple times, but it actually got the attention of some people who normally wouldn't look up from their device, and we got people to volunteer. So I shared that. There are lots of ways to expand on your forms of communication. We've just been really lucky. And I do have one more, actually. Hold on. I almost forgot. Hold on. I'll show the other because it is.
Is this true? We knew this day would come.
There are no more volunteers. What are we gonna do?
No, this is a real volunteer crisis. Children need to be mentored. People are hungry. They need food. Houses need to be built. And we've got senior citizens who need care.
The world is changing. We need to do something.
Well, what are we going to do?
Can we do it?
We've got no choice. It's up to Alston and Bird volunteers. You know the firm's been preparing all along. Everything is in place. Pay time off for volunteering, lots of opportunities, and a great t-shirt. Alston and Bird volunteers, destined to change the world forever.
End right there. We sort of ran short. You'll get some more material in the slides, but we thought it was a good time to end on a high note, actually. And questions, comments, conversation.
That's all, Cheryl.
Yes.
I have one question. Please. As far as tracking volunteer hours, does anyone in the room use feedback?
No.
I've not heard of that.
No.
Well, we're going to partner with them. I'll let you know.
Great.
Actually, that is a great thing, and I feel when you find a tool that works and works well, it's one of those things. As a CVC member, when I first started, it was almost a lifesaver for me. I would call and say, could we just have a conference call on this topic? Because I would be interested to hear what others are doing, or how do you do it? Is there something better before I made an investment? And, you know, that's the kind of thing, setting up, I don't know, a brown bag around recording time, how you've done it, building it's helpful. It's helpful for everyone, and there are probably other members who would benefit. So.
Right, from all that. Oh, gosh. Go right ahead.
Okay. So I was curious, we were wanting to set a company volunteer goal for the year. I was actually talking to Lily about this yesterday, but basically, is there any kind of formula or something like that that you can say, our company is this size, we think it would be realistic to set a goal for X number of hours. And I know a lot goes into play with that, but it's not certain volunteer activities, maybe only 30 people can participate, or there's a limit or something like that. I was just curious.
I would say starting out low is always great, right? Because then you've got some place to improve over the next year. But maybe somewhere around, like what if 30% of your employees participated and they volunteered at least 4 hours, which is maybe the timing of a typical volunteer project, what does that equate to? And then that could give you maybe a pretty high goal, since 30% of participation is really good. So you might even start a little lower than that. Maybe if you calculated 20% of your workplace volunteering and doing at least one project for 4 hours, what would that number be? I don't like math, though, so more about the words.
I know that most corporations care about education, but how does that stack up for corporations that do different projects every time and focus on different areas throughout series of events, and then how does that also stack up against a corporation's priority or employees' priority to be social? So which do they care more about, and then what?
So I would say career-oriented employees actually do care about the company's priority focus area. So if a career-oriented employee said, I want to do some volunteering, I'm probably going to seek out the program or the project that supports the company's priority. But I would say the social-oriented volunteer wants to do something that's fun. It doesn't necessarily matter the type of focus area they're connected to. Does that answer your question? And again, a company can support several different focus areas. They don't all necessarily have to support, or not every program they do might support education. They might have education plus environment and maybe something else that connects again to their competencies or their brand. So education is just one of many that a lot of companies we see support. I think arts too is something that also other folks have done research on what companies supported. Arts and education seems to be the top two if you were to survey those companies.
But I will tell you, there are ways to combine the social and build them in, and that's one of the easiest things. So if you're seeing social is really significant, then that's what you build into the program. Volunteer experiences that are very interactive and allow for the social.
Team building. What else? Go ahead.
I just wanted to echo what you said, Katie, that the mix is very important, because oftentimes you'll see that what we're seeing is companies do have business goals or an issue or something that they're trying to solve.
Right.
So then when you are aligning your volunteer projects up with what they're trying to solve or with goals as it relates to the community, then you have a win. But when you have a lot of companies are saying, hey, we've got like 30-40% of our employee base are now millennials. Well, then we also have to think about that piece too. So going back, the point that you made was spot on, is being flexible and having a variety, making sure you're hitting what's important to leadership. But then also making sure that you are giving opportunities that people know that they're going to have fun about, that they're still going to be tangible and leave an impact. So they'll come again. So it may look like I'm having a project, and then afterwards I may be having a happy hour at JC's Kitchen, or I may do something that seems a little bit more focused on millennials. The tangible, I want to paint a wall. Sometimes we feel like, okay, are we going to paint the wall?
Yes. One more time.
The wall, and then it's a meeting at the brewery. So you were spot on when you said making sure that they're
A lot of different.
We didn't talk about this today, but to add to that, what we've seen, and people are hungry for it, are learning experiences as a part of it too, education programs. We run, and we do this every other year, and I'd say for all of them. We've actually done a board training 101, 201, 301, and we're about to do a 401. It will be pure legal, but it will be fascinating because the lawyers are the people who handle the mergers and also battlegrounds. And there's some pretty interesting legal disasters. So we've got several lawyers who are going to speak on that. But that has been amazing. The 101, 201, 301, we record them. People throughout the year can go back. We've also done grant writing 101 and 201. The grant writing are critical. And doing these things, and we videotape them all and then put them on our website, the Pro Bono Community Service website, and it's fabulous. Like, I get thrilled. We've got a volunteer out in Silicon Valley. She has gotten thousands of dollars for a nonprofit because she's been able to do that, and it's what she wants to do. And then she still runs all these volunteer things. So don't forget the head. It's not just the hands and the heart. And I want to say that. I think more and more millennials don't want to just paint walls. They don't.
And they all want to understand the impact that you're making on. We talk about tracking hours, the number of hours you give, but so what? What do those hours actually accomplish in the community for our nonprofits and our community members? What else? Top of mind? Anything else? I know you guys are all cycling through a lot of information. It was a lot, but we very much thank you guys for being here and for learning. And There will be more and more for you to learn as your career progresses in this sector. So,
And we're always here for you if you need anything.
very true. And Cheryl's the way to get a hold of us. That one right there.
That's right. That's right. And let's start with a round of applause for Cheryl and Katie. So great. You guys are awesome. In celebration of your service today, I've brought copies of our Carol D. Reiser Children's Book Award that we present each year, celebrating volunteerism and inspiring that in young people. And you have a choice. We can either donate it to a school that would benefit for you, or if you have a partner like Dunbar and you'd like to hand deliver, I know that you're passionate about that.
I don't even have kids, man.
Katie, there's a place for your book. Oh, yeah. But did anybody have any aha moments today that you'd like to share? Was there any one thing that our speakers have shared with us?
So we haven't launched our program yet at Racetrack, but we did not think to talk to risk management, and we're planning off-site volunteer projects, so that's huge.
Yeah, very good.
Everything was great, but that was really
Made it worth your time today. Good. Good.
Although you're probably not going to like us once you start talking to those people. They're going to be like, what are you doing?
It's better than you think. Like sometimes it puts my mind at ease actually before something bad happens.
That's all.
The car accident with the interns was like, it happened early on, and thankfully nobody was hurt, but it had never occurred to me. Yeah.
Any other aha moments? Neely?
I'm an HR and people delete every email or that I don't open any emails that I send. So Katie and I are so excited to do videos and
Yay!
way of reaching people.
Yeah,
Very
that's
cool.
awesome.
Very good. One final aha moment. Anybody?
I just wanted to say thank you. Everything was really great here. We do this off the side of our desk. This is not really our real day job. So we don't think about a lot of these things, but it was really exciting, and we got several things we want to take back and discuss and try to implement. And also, we're a part of a really large company, JLL, but we are just have a group in Atlanta.
Got it.
So it's interesting to try to think. I would love to spread this to other markets and get in touch with them. Right now, we kind of operate separately. But you've given us a lot to think about, and we're totally going to do some videos. Those were awesome.
We're going to see a good wave of videos here. I can see it coming. Well, no matter where you are and your experience with your company, whether your company is just getting started or if you're a seasoned veteran, I hope that you got some great information today from our great facilitators here. We want to thank again Alston and Bird for the generous hospitality. Both Cheryl and Javaris were great hosts today, so thank you. As Katie mentioned, we will be sending our PowerPoint from today as well as some handouts and our list of attendees, so watch for that by email. And then you can also find this presentation on the CVC of Atlanta website in the member resources. We'll keep that there going forward. If you have a challenge that wasn't addressed today that's still a burning issue for you, feel free to email me, because one of my favorite parts of my job is matchmaking. And sometimes we have members that may not be represented here today that might have a good solution for you. So it's fun to put you together, and our board likes to help with that too. So if you're a member or member partner that attended today, thanks so much for your time. If you're here today as a CVC guest for the first time, we invite you to join us, and both Neely and I or any current CVC members and board members would be happy to talk to you about CVC membership. I want to tell you about a couple of upcoming programs we have. On March 1st, which is just next Wednesday, we will all be together again, right up the street at King and Spalding. Lane will be on a great panel we're going to host called Telling Your Story of Community Impact, Opportunities and Challenges. So great program to look forward. That's from 8 to 10 next Wednesday. And on the 26th of April, we do get together monthly, we will be having an update on the topic of collective impact. This is a theme and a lesson, Keisha's clapping back there, that we're really working with our members to help educate about what collective impact is and how your companies and networks can leverage that for good to really affect social change. We'll be talking with Ken Zeff from Learn for Life. He'll be giving us an update, and we'll be at the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta for that session. Again, if you didn't get a parking pass, oh, of course, yes.
Our conference.
If you have not registered,
I don't think it's open yet. Well, maybe it did. I should know better.
I don't think it has.
It hasn't.
Maybe next week. Next week. But we do run an annual conference. It's called the Conference on Volunteering and Service, and it will be June 19th through 21st in Seattle this year. And you can go to the website Volunteering and Service, either .com or .org. It's one of the two.
It's not to be missed, though. Great for where.
And United Way's program, this what's it called, 3 Cs or something?
C3s.
C3s, yes. Yes.
Okay, good, good.
It's an all-day program also.
Another great
coming up.
learning.
Yeah, that is a good one. That's a good one. Okay, and maybe I can include that in the follow-up email. So